Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking the Buster Sword and plunging it right into the heart of a game that, well, it fundamentally changed not just the role-playing genre, but really global gaming culture itself. Final Fantasy VII.
Absolutely. This title, hitting the scene back in 1997, it's just so much more than nostalgia fodder. We've pulled together sources from critical retrospectives, a lot of fan discussions, and those really crucial, illuminating developer interviews.
Yeah, those interviews give such great insight.
They really do. And they all point to this enduring legacy, from its profound themes like corporate greed and ecological decay, right through to its revolutionary technical gambles and its strategic mechanics.
Our sources definitely confirm that FFVII wasn't just like a commercial hit. It was a cultural tsunami. It blew the JRPG niche wide open for millions of players, especially in the West.
It really did. And it helps cement this whole idea of a cinematic video game experience. Its success also, massively boosted Sony's position.
Oh, for sure. It practically guaranteed the PlayStation's lead in those pretty brutal console wars back then.
So our mission today really is to unpack the why. Why does this particular game still hold such fascination? Why did it transcend its medium so effectively?
Right.
We're going to examine the calculated risks. Square took huge risks, actually. And the controversial narrative choices, the ones that delivered, real emotional pain to players.
Yeah, that moment. We'll get to it.
We will.
Yeah.
And how the core game mechanics were so intrinsically tied to the game's powerful anti-corporate and ecological message. So this is for you, the listener, who wants to go beyond the surface chat and really understand the foundations of this masterpiece.
Okay, so the story of Final Fantasy VII, it doesn't actually start in Midgar with Cloud, does it? It really kicks off with this moment of, monumental corporate drama and a huge technological gamble.
That's right. After nearly a decade of a really successful partnership, Square basically burned its bridges with Nintendo, their longtime collaborator.
Which was a massive deal at the time. Let's unpack the sheer size of that decision.
It boiled down to something seemingly simple, but monumentally important. The physical media format. Square had this incredibly grand, ambitious vision.
They wanted cinematic storytelling.
Exactly. And that meant integrating high-quality, pre-rendered full-motion video FMV sequences. Lots of them. And that required storage capacity way, way beyond what cartridges, which was Nintendo's thing, could possibly offer.
And Nintendo was really dug in on cartridges, weren't they? Despite the advancement.
They were. Their reasoning, often cited, was things like piracy protection, faster loading times.
Which were valid points, to be fair.
True, but for Square, it was just completely restrictive. They needed the space CDs offered. CDs were slower to load, sure, but offered exponentially more storage. We're talking gigabytes versus megabytes, essentially.
Yeah.
A huge difference.
So the shift was necessary for the vision, but man, the risk. Betting on the PlayStation back in, 95? That wasn't a sure thing at all.
Not even close. I mean, history is littered with failed consoles, right? Think the 3DO, the Atari Jaguar. Companies promised the world, and then poof.
Yeah.
Square was risking their flagship franchise, Final Fantasy, on a totally unproven competitor. That's gutsy.
So how did they actually confirm the PlayStation could handle what they wanted? There must have been a specific test or something that really sealed the deal, convinced them to cut ties with Nintendo after such a long and, as you said, profitable partnership.
The sources confirm that early technical testing was absolutely vital. One key test involved rendering a specific monster, the Behemoth, in full 3D.
Okay.
The model used around 2,000 polygons. Now, that's nothing today, but for mid-90s console hardware, that was complex. And that test reportedly just tanked a frame rate on the competing N64 hardware.
Really? Why was that?
Apparently, the N64's limited texture cache and its reliance on streaming data from the cartridge just couldn't handle it smoothly.
But the PlayStation could.
It could. The sources suggest the PlayStation's architecture, specifically its ability to stream data from the CD and its dedicated GPU, the graphics processing unit. It just allowed for much smoother rendering of those complex textures and models.
So that was it, the proof.
That basically sealed the deal. Despite the huge financial and historical risk, Square ended the relationship with Nintendo. They chose Sony, prioritizing that cinematic scope over cartridge speed.
And pursuing that vision meant ramping up investment like crazy. The core development team ballooned, right, to about 150 people.
Yeah, which was massive for a JRPG team back then. And Square invested incredibly heavily in professional silicon graphics workstations.
Those SGI machines, right, the purple ones.
Exactly. We're talking about getting around 200 of these machines, and each one reportedly cost something like $70,000 USD.
Wow.
That level of spending on 3D tech just shows how utterly serious they were about this commitment. It wasn't a tentative step. It was a full-on dive. Hashtag, tag, 1.2 cinematic aspirations and visual changes.
And all that investment, it was driven by the director Kitase's vision, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He wanted this completely unified work.
Exactly. He aimed for a single, cohesive style. He wanted those elaborate FMV cutscenes, the overworld map, the dynamic battle scenes. He wanted them all to transition smoothly, seamlessly.
Like watching a movie, but you're playing it.
Pretty much. The goal was a truly cinematic presentation. Every shot, every camera angle was meant to be suffused with meaning, lending real gravity to the story.
And going 3D forced a huge and probably painful for some fans artistic shift. They had to ditch the classic Natution style.
The chibi style, yeah. The two heads tall characters that define Final Fantasy I through 6.
Why couldn't they just make those 3D?
Well, the change wasn't purely aesthetic. It was driven by technical necessity, too. While those short, iconic models were beloved, they apparently caused huge problems in 3D.
Like what?
The sources mentioned serious clipping issues, like literally characters would end up stabbing themselves in the head when they tried to swing a sword overhead.
Oh, okay. That's not very heroic. Not really. So moving to the more realistically proportioned characters, okay, they were blocky by today's standards, but revolutionary then. It just eliminated those kinds of glitches.
And crucially, the taller models allowed for stuff the story needed, right? Like vehicles.
Absolutely. The sources point out, how could you stage serious scenes with Barret driving a truck, or the team on motorcycles, or flying the tiny Bronco with those little chibi sprites? It would have looked, well, truly absurd or lame, as one source put it.
Yeah, fair point. The shift enabled those high-octane cinematic sequences.
In this whole gamble, technological and artistic, it paid off, commercially, monumentally. Square backed the launch with a massive $100 million ad campaign.
Which was huge money back then.
Unheard of for a JRPG, and it focused almost entirely on those flashy FMV cutscenes. That marketing deliberately aimed to shatter the niche perception of JRPGs in the West.
And boy, did it work. The results speak for themselves. FFVII sold over 1 million copies by the end of '97 just in the US. Rave reviews. Best-selling PlayStation game. It absolutely cemented Sony's console lead and introduced this whole new generation to complex, narrative-driven fantasy. It was just a masterclass in using tech spectacle to elevate the story and disrupt the market.
Okay, so beyond the amazing tech and the visuals, what really cemented FFVII's legacy, I think, was the sheer gravity and complexity of its story. This isn't your standard save the princess's quest.
Not at all. It's built on this really heavy foundation of social commentary, ecological warnings, and quite profound psychological trauma.
The creators themselves were super clear about the emotional core, right? Kitase confirmed the main theme was simply life and death.
Yeah, he and Mr. Sakaguchi, the series creator, had explicit instructions about the emotional weight. Sakaguchi apparently said, anyhow, you have to portray death, make it real.
And that brings us to, well, the moment. The narrative beat that defined the game for a whole generation. Aerith's death.
Right. And the sources are clear. This wasn't just for shock value. It wasn't cheap. It was specifically designed to simulate the messy, abrupt reality of loss.
Yeah.
In a way that completely subverted decades of RPG tropes.
Because usually death in RPGs was reversible, right? Phoenix Downs, resurrection spells.
Exactly. Or it was plot-specific but heroic, a noble sacrifice. Or happened to minor characters you weren't that invested in. Killing Aerith, a main party member, the primary healer, that was different.
It was aimed at making players feel real, lasting pain, like how people die in the real world suddenly, violently, without fanfare or logic.
Kitase explicitly wanted to evoke a feeling of great emptiness. That feeling where the player thinks, wait, there's no secret, I can't bring her back, what now? That empty feeling.
That vacuum, that absence, that's what made it so revolutionary. It wasn't just the stabbing, it was the crushing finality afterwards, forcing you, the player, to confront that loss and just keep going.
And this theme of profound loss, it just runs through the entire cast like Mako veins. It leads to major identity crises for almost everyone.
Like Cloud himself.
Absolutely. His entire persona is built on the fabricated past of his dead friend, Zack. He's living a lie. And Barret's character is driven entirely by the guilt and grief over his hometown, Coral, being destroyed.
Sid, too, losing his dream of space.
Exactly. Sid is defined by losing that lifelong dream. Pretty much everyone is dealing with immense emotional baggage. They're defined not just by their strengths, but by their psychological pain, their trauma.
And it's that willingness to show heroes who are deeply flawed, who are racked with trauma. That's what makes them feel so compelling, so modern, even now. Hashtag 2.2 environmentalism and Shinra's parasitic nature.
So internally, the characters are struggling with loss. But externally, they're fighting against what was probably the most potent piece of environmental commentary in gaming history up to that point.
Mako energy. It's the absolute center of it. It's so clearly positioned as this allegory for our real-world reliance on destructive energy sources, whether it's oil or nuclear power.
Right. Mako is literally the planet's soul, the life stream being forcefully extracted, refined for energy.
Yeah.
And using it depletes the planet, destroys the environment, just like our fossil fuel dependency.
And Shinra, the corporation, the sources describe it as a bloated, hungry monstrosity.
Yeah, they've systematically just gobbled up or destroyed all economic competition.
Yeah.
They've infected democratic power structures. Their whole operation in Midgar is completely parasitic, just draining the planet for profit.
But they're smart about it, aren't they? They maintain control by giving back just enough power.
Exactly. A tiny fraction of that energy is returned to the people. Just enough to keep the population of Midgar docile and dependent.
And that's the uncomfortable truth the game presents, right?
Yeah.
The average citizen in Midgar, the Shinra drones, they rely entirely on the very Mako energy that's killing the planet, just for their comfortable lives. Air conditioning, electricity.
That's the real genius of the setup. The fight against Shinra isn't just about blowing up reactors. It's a philosophical battle against convenience, against ingrained dependency.
So escaping Shinra isn't just winning a fight. It means the people would have to completely change their way of life, accept hardship for the planet's survival.
Precisely. And the villains throughout the story all reflect this parasitic motivation. They just differ in scale.
Like Don Corneo in the slums.
Right, a small-time gangster exploiting the slums for petty profit. Then you have President Shinra, a narcissistic sociopath exploiting the entire world.
And his end, killed by Sephiroth. The irony.
Deeply ironic. The sources note that all his hoarded corporate wealth and power amounted to absolutely nothing when faced with true, almost elemental destructive force.
You could even include Professor Hojo in that.
Oh, definitely. Hojo exploits life itself through his twisted genetic experiments. They're all facets of the same core theme. Taking, exploiting, without any consideration for the consequences. Hashtag 2.3, the complex character of Barret and the terrorist debate.
Now, Barret Wallace and his group, Avalanche, they introduce one of the game's most, let's say, uncomfortable and complex themes.
Yeah.
Resistance versus terrorism.
Yeah. Shinra labels them terrorists, flat out. But by the end of the story, they're hailed as the heroes of the Genova War.
We should probably quickly define Genova in this context for anyone unfamiliar.
Good point. So the Genova War isn't really against Shinra. It's the planet's fight against Genova, this extraterrestrial entity, the calamity from the skies.
The alien life form whose cells were used to create Sephiroth, right? Because they mistakenly thought Genova was one of the ancients, the Cetra.
Exactly. So that war is existential. The fight against Shinra is more environmental and political. Avalanche basically transitions from fighting the political enemy, Shinra, to fighting the existential one, Genova and Sephiroth.
Okay, got it. And back on that political front, Shinra calling Avalanche terrorists.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting piece of in-game propaganda, especially how the sources note the real-world meaning of terrorism changed so much after 9/11, affecting how newer audiences might see Barret's actions.
But within the game's context, Barret's rage is presented as completely justified. It comes from this deep guilt and grief over his hometown, Coral.
Which Shinra destroyed,
Yeah.
right, and blamed on rebels.
Yeah, they scorched the land and blamed it on a rebel group to cover their tracks, so Barret replacing his hand with a gun arm. It's this literal symbolic commitment to fighting back against that injustice.
But justified anger doesn't mean the consequences go away. The game really forces you to question the means of resistance. Avalanche bombing Reactor 1,
Yeah.
it causes collateral damage.
It absolutely does. It perpetuates a cycle of hatred, leads to orphaned children, widowed spouses, and ultimately it contributes to Shinra dropping the Sector 7 plate, killing thousands.
That's the real tension. Barret eventually accepts the bombing was a wrongdoing. The game doesn't give easy answers.
No, it doesn't. You raised a key point. If Shinra is pure evil, doesn't that justify extreme measures? But FFVII seems to argue forcefully that even if the target is evil, the collateral damage still carries a heavy moral cost.
So Barret moves beyond just being an angry guy. He becomes this complex figure struggling with guilt and doubt about his own actions.
Exactly. It shows the real cost of violent resistance, even against a truly despicable enemy.
Okay, let's talk mechanics. Because what truly elevates FFVII, beyond just having a great story, is how brilliantly its mechanics are integrated, the Materia system. It's not just for customizing characters.
No, it's inextricably linked to those ecological and narrative themes we were just discussing. It's probably the single most important gameplay innovation in FFVII.
It replaced the traditional job classes, right?
Completely. And it became the absolute heart of magic and strategy in the game. And crucially, it ensures that the very act of gaining power is never disconnected from the price the planet pays. Hashtag 3.1 Materia as lore embodied in mechanics.
So Materia are described as these little orbs of condensed magical energy, and that energy comes directly from Mako.
Directly from Mako, which is the life stream, the planet's soul. So every time Cloud casts fire or uses any Materia ability, he is literally drawing upon the planet's lifeblood.
Tying the combat system right back to that central environmental conflict. That's smart.
And this lore isn't just flavor text. It's used to create a direct mechanical trade-off. We could call it the Mako price.
How does that work in gameplay? We know Mako exposure is bad in the story. Psychosis, physical deterioration.
Well, in gameplay, equipping Materia, which is concentrated Mako, remember, it actually reduces the character's core stats.
Oh, really? Which ones?
Typically, you lose a percentage of your max HP and often your physical defense for every Materia you equip. Sometimes other stats too, depending on the specific Materia.
So you gain magical power, summon monsters, get cool abilities, but you become physically weaker, more fragile.
Exactly. You become more vulnerable to physical attacks. It's a deliberate design choice. It constantly reinforces the idea that consuming the planet's life source, while powerful and useful, is inherently damaging to the individual user.
That is brilliant world building through mechanics. The player feels that trade-off constantly. Do I stack powerful magic and summons and become a glass cannon, or do I sacrifice some of that power for basic survival?
It's elegantly done, and it also allowed Square to fully embrace a classless system. Previous Final Fantasies relied heavily on fixed character classes, Black Mage, Dragoon, Monk, etc.
With specific skills they learned automatically.
Right. FFVII basically scrapped that. Any character, even Barret, the big gun arm guy, could theoretically use any spell or ability, just depending on the materia they equipped.
Shifting the whole strategic focus away from fixed roles and onto materia customization and preparation?
Precisely. It gave players incredible freedom. Hashtag tag 3.2 strategic customization and deep combinations.
And that customization depth is what gives FFVII just phenomenal replayability. Once players figured out the link slots on weapons and armor, oh man, you could break the game wide open.
Those link slots were key. The system uses color coding. Green for magic, yellow for command abilities like Steel or Mime, red for the big summons.
And blue for support materia, right? Those only work in link slots.
Exactly. And it's the combination of colors in those link slots that unlocks the truly game-breaking potential everyone talks about.
Okay, let's walk through some classic examples for the listener. Starting defensively, how did you deal with nasty status effects like poison or stop?
Simple, but effective. You took a blue added effect materia and paired it with a status-inflicting materia like green poison or time in a linked slot on your armor.
Ah, on the armor specifically.
Right. Added effect plus poison on armor grants immunity to poison. Added effect plus time on armor grants defense against stop and slow.
Yeah.
If you put the same combo on a weapon, you'd inflict that status instead of defending against it.
Okay, that makes sense. Armor for defense, weapon for offense. And what about the classic get-out-of-jail-free card?
That would be pairing the yellow command materia final attack with the red phoenix summon in a linked slot.
Final attack. That triggers when the character dies, right?
Correct. So if the character holding that combo gets knocked out, final attack automatically triggers Phoenix. Phoenix deals fire damage to all enemies. A&D revives your entire party.
Wow. That's a serious failsafe.
It is. It takes a long time to level up final attack, so it triggers multiple times, but it's almost essential for some of the really tough late-game bosses.
But the ultimate, most infamous combo involves the Mime materia, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Mime is a yellow command materia. And its magic is that it replicates the last action performed by anyone in the party for 0 MP cost.
0 MP. Okay, I see where this is going.
You pair Mime with the blue support materia counter. Then you add the most devastating red summon materia, Knights of the Round.
Which hits like 13 times.
And often hits for max damage each time. If you really want to break it, you also add HP absorbed materia to the mix. So that The character counters every single enemy attack by miming Knights of the Round, dealing insane damage, and simultaneously healing themselves completely because of HP absorbed.
Good lord. That basically automates destruction.
Pretty much, it's the ultimate expression of exploiting the system's synergies. Total optimization. Hashtag
Cool.
hashtag 3.3. Optional content and depth. And the fact that you need combos like that mime setup highlights a key point. The really game-breaking material like Knights of the Round itself or mime,
Yeah.
you can't just buy them in a shop.
No, you have to earn them, which is
Yeah.
where the game's massive amount of optional content comes in.
Exactly. The sources emphasize how overflowing FFVI's world was, with stuff to do outside the main story, easily adding over 100 hours of playtime if you wanted to do everything.
We're talking the Gold Saucer minigames.
All those addictive, sometimes frustrating games.
Fort Condor, that weird real-time strategy defense thing.
Yep. And of course, hunting down the two optional party members.
Yuffie Kisaragi, the cocky ninja girl who tries to steal your materia.
Right, she appears randomly early on, but you can totally miss recruiting her if you choose the wrong dialogue options. She's obsessed with getting materia back for her homeland, Wutai.
And then there's Vincent Valentine.
Ah, Vincent. The brooding, emo, former Turk.
Yeah.
Sleeps in a coffin. Victim of Professor Hojo's twisted genetic experiments back in the day.
His whole backstory ties directly into Sephiroth's origins and Shinra's dirty secrets, right?
Deeply. Finding him and exploring his past adds huge layers to the lore. They aren't just tacked-on characters. They really flesh out the world and the central conflicts.
But, okay, let's talk about the real grind. The path to getting the absolute best materia, like Knights of the Round, we have to talk about. Chocobo breeding.
The infamous chocobo breeding, yes.
Mm.
You absolutely need a gold chocobo to reach certain hidden areas on the world map, areas inaccessible by foot, airship, or even submarine. And those areas contain the ultimate materia.
And getting that gold chocobo, it's
Yeah.
not straightforward.
Not even remotely. It's a monumental time sink, and it feels intentionally designed to be frustrating. First, you have to wander around specific spots on the map to catch specific types of wild chocobos.
Good ones, great ones.
Right. Then you have to feed them specific, expensive greens. Then you have to take them to the gold saucer and race them repeatedly, like dozens, maybe hundreds of times to boost their class rating.
I remember spending hours just racing chocobos.
Then you have to breed specific pairs using rare nuts you often have to find by stealing them from specific, sometimes rare enemies out in the world.
And you're hoping the offspring inherits the right stats and, crucially, the right color. Blue, green.
To eventually, through multiple generations of breeding and racing, achieve the mythical gold chocobo. It can honestly take dozens of hours of this repetitive, non-combat gameplay loop.
It feels less like a fun side quest and more like mandatory virtual animal husbandry just to unlock god-tier combat power.
Pretty much. But without that gold chocobo, you simply cannot reach the island cave containing the Knights of the Round summoned materia, which, as you said, can trivialize even the final boss if you level it up.
So that connection between really arduous, frustrating, optional content and achieving ultimate power, that's kind of the essence of FFVII's depth, isn't it?
It really is. And once you've mastered that system, once you have your gold chocobo and your ultimate materia, then you can face the true optional super boss challenges, the ruby and emerald weapons.
Which are notoriously difficult.
Insanely so. Beating them is basically impossible without understanding and exploiting the materia system to its absolute limit. You need strategies involving mime, final attack combos, specific status defenses, maybe even intentional materia duplication glitches depending on how you play. They demand true system mastery, proving that optimization, more than just grinding levels, is the real key to success in FFVI's endgame.
All right, so as we head towards the game's climax, the final confrontation, the narrative focus really shifts, doesn't it? It moves away from the more grounded fight against Shinra toward this ultimate existential conflict.
Yeah, and it gets framed very strongly around these moral extremes. Specifically, Aerith representing good and Sephiroth representing evil.
They're almost presented as polar opposites.
Academic analysis actually confirms the game encourages viewing them this way. They're opposites on a genetic level, too, really. Aerith is a true ancient, a cetra, representing this pure spiritual connection to the planet.
And Sephiroth.
He's a corrupted reflection. The result of Shinra's genetic experiments using cells from the alien Genova. He represents, as one source puts it, evil personhood, the ultimate destructive force born from hubris and manipulation.
In Nobuo Uematsu's music, it just perfectly underscores this duality. The themes for Aerith and Sephiroth do so much heavy lifting in defining their presence.
Absolutely. Sephiroth's main themes, like those chosen by the planet, or the incredibly iconic One-Winged Angel from the final battle. They use these really dark musical timbres, a slow, imposing tempo, and lots of harmonic dissonance, that jarring, unsettling sound.
And those chanting choirs.
Right. Crucially, his music incorporates elements often associated with sacred music, the choir, the tubular bells, church bell sounds. This reinforces his terrifying emerging status as this godlike entity. It's like he's seizing divinity. The music signals his inhuman, almost cosmic power.
And then you have Aerith's theme.
Which is just the complete opposite. Defined by that delicate piano sound, a simple, memorable, major key melody. It reinforces her role perfectly. The spiritual intercessor, the healer. The music feels light, hopeful, maybe a little melancholic, but fundamentally gentle.
Such a beautiful contrast to Sephiroth's heavy, dark opera.
And the conflict between them is made visceral through sound design, especially during that scene, Aerith's death. The background music cuts out completely.
Silence.
Almost silence. When Sephiroth descends and the Masamune strikes, the only sound you hear is that percussive, slow heartbeat rhythm, which is actually taken directly from Sephiroth's theme music.
Oh, wow. I never realized that.
Yeah, it emphasizes his chilling, inhuman presence and the sudden, brutal finality of her death, rather than giving her a heroic or dramatic musical send-off at that exact moment. It's incredibly effective and chilling.
And the final victory against Sephiroth, it's musically complex too. You have Clyde's internal struggle, but you also hear fragments of Aerith's theme sort of fighting against Sephiroth's dissonant sounds.
Right. But crucially, the game and the music strongly signals that the final victory, the one against the giant meteor threatening the planet, is collective. It's not just Cloud.
Aerith's prayers activated the holy materia.
But it's the life stream itself, the planet's collective soul, gathered and unified, that ultimately pushes back and destroys Meteor. And the music reinforces this beautifully. It shifts away from the individual character themes and swells back into the game's main, triumphant opening theme.
Signaling that success wasn't just about individual heroism, but about unification, about the planet itself acting.
Exactly. A collective effort saved the day. Hashtag tag 4.2, Cloud's broken identity, and Red Thirst's transformation.
Now, speaking of individual struggles, the narrative's real emotional sophistication, for me, comes when we finally peel back the layers on our main hero, Cloud Strife. That stoic, cool, spiky-haired mercenary we start with. Turns out he's anything but.
Oh yeah, that revelation in the live stream late in the game, it just completely subverted every expectation the player had built up over like 40 hours of gameplay.
We find out he wasn't the elite first-class soldier he claimed to be.
Not at all. He was actually just a regular infantryman, a failed soldier candidate who got caught in the Nibelheim incident, experimented on by Hojo, and suffered severe Mako poisoning.
And his whole persona.
It was basically constructed in his fractured mind. He unconsciously adopted the persona, the mannerisms, even some memories of his deceased friend, the actual first-class soldier, Zack Fair.
And combine that with his own sort of childish idea of what a cool hero should be like.
Exactly. And the sources point out something fascinating. The Sephiroth the party was chasing for much of the early game. Often, that wasn't even the real Sephiroth. It was just a projection, a manifestation created by the Genova cells within Cloud, manipulating his broken psyche.
That moment, when you, the player, realize the hero you've been controlling is essentially an unreliable narrator, lying to himself and everyone else. It's just monumental.
It strips away that stoic JRPG hero cliché completely. And somehow, it makes him far more endearing, as one source put it. His flaws, his vulnerability, his struggle to piece together his true self. It gives him a depth and texture that a perfect, infallible hero could never have.
And that theme of overcoming inherited shame or loss, it runs through other characters too, right? Like Red 13th and Anaki.
Yeah, his arc is really powerful too. For most of the game, he carries this deep, false shame. He believes his father, Sato, was a coward who abandoned his duty, abandoned Cosmo Canyon to the attacking G tribe.
And that belief really holds him back, stops him from fully embracing his identity and his responsibility.
Right. But then he discovers the truth in the G cave.
Yeah.
He sees his father, Sato, petrified, turned to stone, but still standing, eternally vigilant, having died defending the Canyon Pass alone.
Not a coward at all, but a hero.
Exactly. And knowing that truth allows Nanaki to finally overcome that internalized shame, that loss. He transforms from the cynical, guarded creature into someone filled with quiet humility and pride, ready to truly fight for the planet.
These character arcs, they show the power of confronting and accepting difficult truths about yourself and your past. It's not just about fighting monsters, it's about internal battles too.
Absolutely central to the game's emotional core.
Okay, no deep dive into FFVI's legacy is complete without tackling the big one, the eternal debate. Final Fantasy VII versus its immediate predecessor, the beloved Final Fantasy VI.
Ah, yes. The SNES masterpiece versus the PlayStation game changer is a comparison that comes up constantly.
And as the sources often note, it frequently boils down to preference, doesn't it? Reflecting that huge generational leap from 16-bit 2D to 32-bit 3D.
It really does. Now, FFEI often gets praised for having a smaller, more focused core cast.
Sure.
Cloud, Barret, Tifa, Aerith. They get intense development. The argument is that this gives them more individual importance to the plot.
Compared to FFVI's massive ensemble cast, how many were there? 14 playable characters.
Yeah, 14, yeah. And while many were beloved, critics sometimes argue that some of them felt a bit superfluous to the plot. Their individual stories maybe not integrating as fully into the main narrative as FFVII's core group did.
Okay, but on the flip side, FFVI fans often argue it had superior mechanical variety.
That's a very common point. While FFVI's Materia system offers incredible customization, the criticism is that it can ultimately make all the characters feel a bit homogeneous.
Because anyone can eventually use any spell or ability if they equip the right materia.
Exactly. Whereas FFVI had truly specialized character classes, each with unique, fixed skill sets that nobody else could replicate. Terra's Morph Trance ability, Cilly's Runic to absorb magic, Setzer's random slots, Gao's huge variety of enemy rages.
Lock Steel, Edgar's tools, Sabin's blitz inputs.
Right. That led to, arguably, far greater strategic variety in party composition. FFVI fans maintained those fixed classes offered more meaningful inherent differences between characters than FFVII's system, where the strategy felt more external based on the materia you equipped rather than innate to the character.
What about things like usability and visuals?
Well, FFVII definitely had the advantage in UI. Its menus were slicker, less cluttered, benefiting from the PlayStation hardware. That ease of use was likely a big factor in it becoming such a mainstream hit, especially for players new to JRPGs. It was just less intimidating than VI's dense customization screens sometimes felt.
But visually, that's where the debate gets really interesting.
It is. FFVI's blocky, early 3D character models and pre-rendered backgrounds were absolutely groundbreaking at the time. But many fans argue they've aged kind of poorly, especially compared to the beautiful, detailed, and arguably timeless 2D sprite work of FFVI.
Yeah, those FFVI sprites still look gorgeous today.
They really do. Conversely, FFVI is sometimes cited as having maybe better exploration, especially in the World of Ruin section, and a slightly shorter overall length, maybe 40-ish hours, versus FFVI's 50-plus for a standard playthrough.
Making City potentially more replayable for some.
Potentially. Ultimately, like you said, it often comes down to personal preference and which era of gaming resonates more. Both games were absolute titans that ruled their respective generations. But FFVII undeniably took the bigger risk, the one that completely redefined the future of the franchise and, really, the entire genre. #outro.
So, wrapping this up, this deep dive really confirms that Final Fantasy VII's enduring success wasn't just luck or timing. It was this incredible alignment of a bold technological gamble, really profound thematic depth, and just ingenious mechanical design.
Yeah, we talked about that huge risk, jumping ship to Sony and embracing 3D.
And that core battle against corporate greed and environmental destruction, perfectly embodied by Shinra.
And the Materia system, just brilliant how it tied gameplay power directly to the story's ecological themes through that Mako price.
And the characters.
Oh, yeah.
Cloud's broken identity, Barret's guilt, Red 13's transformation. They were all defined by loss and identity crises. That made them so incredibly flawed, but so much more real and endearing because of it.
And looking at the villains from a petty slumlord like Chrono to the suit and tie evil of President Shinra, right up to the cosmic threat of Sephiroth, they all share that same basic, ugly motivation: exploitation. Taking without considering the cost, whether it's from the planet or from other people.
The real power of FFVI, I think, lies in its willingness to show that genuine, messy lost Aerith and deeply flawed heroes, forcing you, the player, to confront uncomfortable truths about environmental destruction, the cost of resistance, and maybe even your own moral complicity in just wanting power through materia.
Which brings us back to that final provocative thought for you to mull over. We noted how the ultimate victory over Meteor wasn't achieved by Cloud's individual strength alone, or even Aerith's holy magic in isolation. It required the collective power of the life stream, the planet's gathered souls acting together in unison.
So what does that suggest for our world? If the solution to a truly existential crisis, whether it's environmental, corporate, ideological, requires the collective good to overcome not just the extremes of evil, but also the inherent limitations of individual heroism, how does that change how we should approach our own massive, modern, global challenges? Challenges that often feel way too big for any single hero, any single nation, any single solution to solve alone.
Something to think about as you consider where real knowledge, real power, and maybe real solutions truly reside.